The speaker I have the privilege to introduce is a seasoned expert in digital marketing and web design with a passion for helping businesses grow their online presence. He has over 15 years of experience working across various industries, helping entrepreneurs and companies alike create user-friendly, results-driven websites and impactful marketing strategies. His expertise lies in building scalable digital solutions that not only attract customers, but foster long-term relationships, driving sustainable business growth. He is dedicated to helping businesses develop clarity, confidence, and accountability in their online strategies. Please help me welcome Alan Hsieh. Hi, Alan.
Hi, everyone.
How are you?
Thanks. Good, good. Thanks, Tori. I appreciate that. Appreciate being here.
Yeah.
I know I wasn't expecting to come here to learn about hair, like I said, but we learn as we go.
Well, just in case you decide to grow yours out, you now have people that you could connect with that
Oh,
would
I
make
do.
sure that you not only look good, but you're taking the best care of your hair and yourself, the total
For
package.
sure. For sure. Yeah, I agree with that.
Now, I want to start off. I usually start off the segments by sharing with our superstars. That's what I call my audience, my superstars,
Hmm.
the guests and I have met. And so I have not actually met Alan in person as yet. I'm hoping to do so. But Alan came to me via introduction by another colleague and dear friend of mine, Barrett Matthews. And I remember having the conversation with Barrett. He was so excited to make that introduction between Alan and I. And he said, this is somebody you definitely need to know, somebody you definitely need to be connected with. And so what did I do? I went onto Alan's LinkedIn profile and I decided to check him out. And I'm going to tell you the very first post that I read from Alan, immediately I knew that he was someone that I not only wanted to get to know better, but someone that I could see in the future collaborations, looking forward to doing more things together. And so I'm just going to say publicly, Alan, thank you for being patient with me, because one of the conversations that we had when we connected to do the show was I was scheduled to have Alan on at the beginning part of the year. Life happened, lots of twists and turns. And then what I shared with him on our reconnection call is that the way how I was doing social media Saturdays before wasn't resonating with me. And so I needed to step back, reevaluate what I was doing and start to think about the value that I wanted to bring into the community. And so we had a really wonderful conversation and discussion around that. And so hopefully we'll be able to share some of those insights with you today. Okay. And so I think, Alan, what I'm going to do is start us off in asking the question. We're talking about digital marketing, online marketing, social media, being in this space. Can you start us off by sharing how important is branding and what are the key roles that branding plays in the digital marketing space?
Yeah. So, in some of the breakout rooms, I sort of talked about my background, started doing and working branding and websites. And we sort of talked about this as well, Taria, like a couple of days ago when we reconnected, which is there are so many websites these days, right, that you can just basically slap on your logo and
Mm-hmm.
then it just looks like you, right?
Yeah.
That's it. It's just white labeling. Where I think branding comes in is, uh, you know, to Crystal's point as well, in one of the breakout rooms, it's like, what is the value that you're providing? How do you stand out from other people? Because you could be anyone that's just, what's something that I learned today? Um, try what was that again, Jaliva? Uh, Basically someone helping with like the root cause of the hair, right? Like you could be just doing hair. Anyone could do that.
Yeah. Well, trichology, but yeah,
Psychology.
for me, it's just yeah, blending nutrition along with whatever's underneath the scalp.
Exactly. Like there's a ton of people doing trichology. What makes you stand out? To Jaleva's point, she stands out because she's helping middle-aged women and she knows them very, very well. And so what is her positioning when it comes to branding? What is her positioning when it comes to how she speaks to her clients, right? So that's when
Mhm.
branding really comes in. And I think everyone here understands the power of branding because it is what separates you from, you know, anyone down the road from you that is doing the same thing. And so bringing it back to my expertise when we talk about websites, and again, Taria, we talked about this the other day, like how do I stand out? Because, there can be another plumber down the road, but his branding can be very different. Maybe he's talking about his colors are different. Maybe it's his language that's different. How does he position himself? He could be serving people from, the east side of the city, and I'm serving people from west side of the city. But how do I make sure that I communicate that well
Mhm.
online, but also as a message? And I think the message is what's really important. And that's something that I've learned over the past, 5, 6 months that we haven't been able to connect. But that's something that I've really learned is the message that's really strong and the value that you provide.
Yeah, I love it. And so one of the things that brings to mind as I hear you speak, and this is the thought that I had this week that's in alignment of this. I had the opportunity to be on a training, and the person said, usually people talk about, you know, connecting with the people who know how to do the how, and people want to relate to the people who do the how. And as
Mm,
I pondered and I reflected on that, you're right. There are so many different people out there who know the hows, right? Because it's, strategy, but it's all about the value that we bring. And so what's the unique value that you bring to your audience? What's the unique value that you bring to your clients,
mhm,
outside of the how of what you do? Like what would make people connect with you? And sometimes it's tangibles, and then a lot of other times is the untangible things or the intangible things. And so the question that I want to follow up with as we talk about that, how can people be able to reflect, those intangibles onto things like website designs or even their marketing strategies and bring it all together?
yeah. No, I think it goes back to who you are and what your story is.
Mm,
So if I think back about the way that I've been developing websites in the past, it's all been very formulated, right? It's very systematic, robotic. There's no emotions behind it. Um there's no human connection.
yeah.
And I think we're really missing that these days, especially with social media. I mean, I know we're more connected than ever before, but we're also not that connected very deeply with the people that we chat with online. And so one of the things that I really focus on these days, especially also with my website, is you need to talk to people on an emotional level, right? Whether
Mm,
it's to sell something or, oops, hold on, whether it's to sell something or whether it's just to get across some sort of message, the emotional side is so important, right? So one of the things that I talk to people, and I think the people that have been in the breakout sessions have heard this, is the words that I use is how do I get my clients clarity? How do I get them confidence? And how do I make them feel unstuck? Right? Those are emotions that we all go through. So for example, Crystal was feeling stuck. She didn't know where she was going. She needed to take that time away and step out to get more clarity, right? That's something that we all need these days. So to bring it back in terms of how do we make sure that it's almost tangible, I think these days with websites, how do we make it sort of like tangible in the digital world? I think
yeah.
it is the story. It is the story behind who you are and how do you communicate that to your audience, right? For example, for me, I have been stuck many times in the past. And so I need to be talking to people that are basically, actually, this is something that I learned recently, which I really love, is help people in transition, right? So, you know, I have been transitioning throughout these last few months. How can I now help those people that are sort of, I don't want to say behind me, but are in the earlier stages of where I was?
Mhm.
And so being able to resonate with them, that's very important.
Yeah, I love that because that's part of what I look at too when it comes to social media marketing. And so we're talking about doing these things in the digital space. People are always looking for the people that they connect with. And like I said, sometimes it's less and less about how you do the actual stuff, but can you connect with people where they are? When people connect with you online, do they understand, do they see you as the person who understand not only where they are now, but where they need, or where they're wanting to go? And so I love that you use the word clarity, in your messaging and having clarity in your branding and knowing who you're out there. Like I use the word serve, like who are you, destined to serve? Okay.
Yeah.
So what are some of the ways, if you could share with us, that an entrepreneur, business owner can make sure that their messaging is both clear when it comes to their website? What does that process kind of look like?
So right now I'm working with a couple of folks on their own, on their positioning basically. And one of them that first came up, he's a dentist out of New York, recently moved to south of Georgia. Um, and you know, he's been working in medical for so long, but what he realized is, he doesn't really want to do medical.
Mm,
He has 200,000 followers on Instagram. I mean, that's a huge milestone. He's under 30 years old. And so it's like, well, how does he sort of take this? Where does he take this? So the messaging came across by just having really conversations. So it doesn't have to be conversations with me. It could be conversations with your friends, people that understand you the most, um, or it could even be with ChatGPT, honestly, these days. Um, and so understanding more about yourself and what you're wanting to, you use the word serve. I
mhm,
use the word value. What
mhm,
is the value that you want to provide for people? Um, And so once you understand the value that you're providing, you'll understand your message a lot better. So I think when we first spoke, Taria, I was very lost in where I was. I'll be honest. I had just started this entrepreneurship road. I had just started thinking about, well, how do I start my own business? I didn't really know much about who I was, to your point, serving,
mhm.
right? And so I thought, and again, to Crystal's point, people really don't care about what you do. Like
Right.
I was so focused on what I was doing, which was just websites and branding and landing pages, design. No one cares about that. There's hundreds of thousands of designers, as you all know. You can go on Upwork, Fiverr. There's millions of me out there and a lot more that could charge for a lot less. But when I understood what my value was that I provide for people, that changed everything,
Mhm,
right? So again, coming back to this understanding of just sitting down, chatting with people, and then realizing actually what I'm doing isn't websites. What I'm doing is helping you get clarity on what you want.
mhm.
It might be a business goal. It might be a more personal branding goal. Heck, it might even be a life goal. But let's get clarity on that. And so once you get clarity on who you are, the value you provide, I think that message comes across a lot better.
And Alan and everyone else, I'm going to share, like, that has been the biggest shift for me in my business. And for those of you who don't know, and I know that Crystal knows because I've had the opportunity to work with Crystal. And so we used to work together, on a team. Okay. And it was one of those things that when I left that team and I decided to start my own business, like literally, I thought the process was going to be easy. And what I said to myself was, I have all the experience. I know how to run campaigns. I have all the tools. Like whenever you see me or you saw me back then, not anymore. I was that person who would literally walk around with a little pull suitcase that had at least two computers, all kinds of gadgets, widgets, cameras, everything in there. And then I stepped out on my journey and like fell flat on my face. And it was so disappointing. And I couldn't understand, like, how can I do this for so long? And now when it comes to my brand, like total failure. And one of the things that I realized and I had to learn is that I didn't have clarity, around my messaging. I didn't have clarity around, who I was in the marketplace and the value that I bring. And so as I started to explore, those same questions for myself, then things became a whole lot easier for me. And so, like, you're right, when I take a look at the value, one of the things that I had to learn that is not technology. So people would come and say, I have trouble with social media. Okay. And they would say, I don't like, turning on the camera, or I might not know how to operate Zoom. What I found is that people can learn technology. It's really muscle memory. After you do it a couple times, your brain is gonna kick in like these are the keystrokes that you need to have. What I found is that people needed a safe space. People needed a space where they can try. People needed the support. People needed accountability. People just needed, confidence boosts, to know that, hey, a lot of things that you're going to try, you're going to fail at, right? But you just keep going. And when we talk about the value, those are the things that, I hope that I bring to my community and they see, because that has been my experience. Okay. And so that's what it's all about. And so if you're on here and you find yourself struggling in that area of connecting with your people, to Alan's point, I'm going to say take some time, to sit down and get like really clear and take a look at, all the value that you bring. And like I said, a lot of times is not just the tangible things that you could touch, but it's the intangibles as well. Okay. And so I'm gonna ask you another question, Alan, because you mentioned another C word, and I love the C's. Like I got 4 C's, right? And so one of the other C's is confidence, right? So
Yeah.
how does confidence play a part in executing all of these strategies that you're talking about? How important is confidence in building your online presence?
Confidence. So I, I think everyone here is on the entrepreneurship path, right?
Mhm.
How many of you started out with no confidence at all? Like, okay. And so I feel like this road of entrepreneurship is also finding who you are, isn't it?
Mhm.
And so the more that you understand who you are, the more you're confident in terms of where you're going. And I think oftentimes we don't have that, to your point, Turia, we don't have that safe space for us to go and explore that. As entrepreneurs, you get thrown into that from day one, right? Well, I don't want to say day one, I want to say minute one, you're thrown right
Minute
into
one,
that.
right.
Yeah. And so I think the other C, which is clarity, really helps with that. When you have clarity on who you are, you're more confident to put that out there
Mhm.
because you're not afraid of that anymore, right? It's the uncertainty of who you are and the value that you provide that makes you go, ooh, I don't know. I don't know if I should do that. I don't know if I'm the expert or if I have anything of value to share. And so getting clarity on who you are, what you provide for people, even if it's just a conversation, even if it's just a chat, um, that really helps you with your confidence. And so a lot of what I've been doing, I guess, is getting the reps in, right? Whether it's like putting myself out there on YouTube, putting myself out there, I mean, here today, or just writing online, all of that is just reps. The more you do it, the better you get at it, but the more confident you'll get from it. Because, I mean, you'll start sort of like not caring what people think as well. Like the more you do it, the more you're more comfortable.
Mhm.
And so one of the big things that I love, it's not a C word, it's an A word, and it's not Alan. I would love it to be Alan, but it's also accountability.
Yeah.
I think having accountability these days is such a rare thing. And
Mhm.
so I hold myself to that, especially at the gym, I would say. I think outside of that, I might miss it. I miss a few percentage here and there. But when it comes to the gym, I hold myself accountable.
Oh, I hope I'm not frozen.
Oh, I can see you. You're moving now. Okay.
Okay, Alan, are you there? Okay, so I don't know if it's Alan and I, okay, but while we wait for Alan to come back, if everyone could hear me, what he's saying is so true. And before we get into the accountability piece, which I'm going to ask him when he comes back, I started off by saying like I have four C's, and what brought me to the four C's. Yeah, okay. So what brought me to the four C's is I talk about being consistent, okay? And as I started to unpack consistency for myself, I realized that what was blocking me from being consistent, number one, is clarity. So it's kind of hard to be consistent in something if you're not clear on what it is you're doing. It's hard to be consistent with something when you are not confident. And then the last C that I'll share is being able to have courage. So with it all being said and done, the thing that helps us to move forward in anything that we do, is the courage. And Alan, I see that you're back and you were
Sorry
talking.
about that.
Oh yeah, that's okay. I couldn't remember or know whether it was you or myself, but I'm glad that you're
Okay.
back. So you were talking about accountability.
Yeah. Yeah. I think accountability is such a rare thing these days. And, like, I don't know where you guys sort of where it cut off for me, but well, what I was saying before, for me, accountability is important because I make sure that I go to the gym 3 times a week. I know that health is important to me. And so when you have accountability, whether it's from yourself, from other people, you're more likely to want to get things done. You're more likely to go, okay, I need to show up today. What does showing up look like? And so that's a question that I think we need to all ask ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. You know, um, Alan, I like that because one of the things that I had to learn on my journey is the definition of accountability. And so one of the things I used to think accountability is like, how many of you ever had an accountability partner and you think that it was your accountability partner's job to call you and ask you, did you get the thing done? Did you do the thing yet? When are you going to get the thing done? And like literally for years, that's what I thought the meaning of accountability was until I really learned that I had to redefine accountability, and it means to be able to account for my own ability. And so one of the things that I'll share, because I'll ask you, what are some of the things that you do to keep yourself accountable? But I know one of the tricks that I do for me to keep me accountable is like I do stuff like this, meaning,
Mhm.
so one of the things that, as a social media strategist, as a marketer, we're all required to do what? Produce content. Okay. Now I'm going to tell you, producing content by myself in my head is not so cool. But when I
Mhm.
create spaces like this, to make content creation easy, then I'm more apt to show up and do the thing because I'm not doing it for me. me alone, I've involved others in the process. Okay. So that's just one of my accountability hacks that I have. Do you have another accountability hack that you use or that you could share?
So I come from a product tech background. And
Mhm.
one of the things I love about product is we have something called the MVP, which is minimum viable product. And what it is what it is. You know, it's what's the most basic thing that you can put out and that you can start testing, right?
Mm.
When it comes to apps, web apps, there's nothing that's going to be perfect. It never is. There's no perfect app out there. It's just, again, it's getting the reps in, it's reiterating. For me, how I hold myself accountable is I go, okay, what's the least that I can do today? Right? Because we all have a least that we can do, right? Let's be honest. We all have
Right.
1 hour in the day that we can spare out and start writing content. That's the truth. And so I tell myself, okay, well, what's the least that I can do? Well, the least I can do is actually let me plan out the whole week's content, get it out there, and then that's done. Now I don't have to think about it. And so I guess it's part of scheduling and planning, but it's also making time for that and telling yourself you have to do it. Um, and I think the more that you put yourself out there, to your point, the more that you're going to go, okay, I'm sort of on a roll here. I don't want to stop. So that's sort of also how I go about it.
Yeah, I love that. So I'm going to also write that down, right? Asking myself when it comes to those big, hard things, what's the least
Yeah.
that I could do, you know, and then
Yeah.
get that thing done and then continue to build from there. So I love it. So I'm going
Yeah.
to, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I want to think about it like this as well. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Dave Ramsey.
Yes.
Um, so Dave Ramsey has the snowball effect. So when you're paying off your loans, your debts, you start from the smallest one and then you build it up and you build it up and you build it up, right? So the bigger it gets, and now you're already finished with the smallest loans or the debts that you've, borrowed or owed. Now you just got the big one and then you chip away at that. That's exactly how I think about it as well.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Okay. So I'm gonna shift gears just a little bit because one of the things that we had the opportunity to talk about offline that I wanted to make sure that we get a chance to go deeper here in our conversation is transactions versus relationships. Okay.
Mm,
And so we're talking about digital marketing, we're talking about online marketing being in the social media space. And we see a lot of transactions happening. Okay. Meaning is click here to get this, buy this product here. And a lot of times people aren't creating the opportunities and the space to build the relationships or take a look at the value of long-term relationships because they're looking at the transaction. So can you share how you balance both?
mm. It's tough. And I say that because I've had a client come through for a website and she does oral facial myofunctional therapy. So she helps people breathe.
Mm.
And she did not have the budget at all for what she wanted. Not at all. But we got to chatting and I really liked the energy and the person that she is. Right? She's a mom. I think she's in her 60s. She's based out of Seattle, but she's doing this. She changed her career path from being a dental hygienist to a myofunctional therapist at a very late stage of her life. And she realized she really just wants to help adults. The reason for that is this is sort of where we connected, is because when you give kids homework, they never really do it. And so she gets frustrated and then she's just like, I don't want to work with kids anymore. Um, and so we sort of kind of bonded over that. And from then on, we've had this relationship, to your point, because
Mm.
I think, again, it comes back to social media these days. Everything is so transactional. right? I mean, look at our feed. Look at everything is just like scroll, scroll, scroll. There's nothing there. And so I think when we're talking about relationships, we really need to just sit down, and it goes back to story, which is what I was talking about before. What is their story? Get to understand their story first. Does that story resonate with you? It probably doesn't. And if it doesn't, maybe there is something for them that is in your service or in your product that you can provide for them, right?
Mhm.
Maybe it is an ebook that you can just give out to them for free. And maybe that does build a relationship. But I think due to the nature of things, I think a lot of, I think it'll even be even more so perhaps in the future that it's going to be more transactional with AI. Although it might be different, it might be the reverse because now that AI is taking care of more of the mundane stuff, we can focus on people now. And
Yeah,
I'm really hoping that that is the case.
me too.
Um, yeah. And so, how do you balance it? I think understanding the person you're talking to, what your story is, that would be the first step. If you resonate with them, if you don't, that's okay because we don't have to cater to everyone. In fact, I think we talked about this before. Like, if you cater to everyone, you're actually catering to no one, right?
Mhm.
If you're selling to everyone, you're selling to no one. And so you have to kind of sort of like find your people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, Alan, because like I said, that's the whole key. So a lot of times, what I see often, and I too, have, done this until I learned better. A lot of times people would go in, into marketing, singular focus, meaning, what can I get out of this? Is this
Hmm.
person gonna be the client? Is this person gonna be a customer? What is it that they can buy? And then if they aren't a fit for your products and services, at the moment, maybe sometimes never, people aren't
Mm.
interested, in fostering, those connections or building those relationships. And so it's one of the things that, like I said, I had to shift my mindset around there and just show up in the posture to serve. And so a lot of times when I meet people on social media, they're not necessarily, a fit, for my products or services or the program that I'm offering at the moment. But once again, how can I serve and how can I build a relationship? So, is it that I could connect them to someone, that I see as, a helper for them. I always say be a resource, right? So I try to look at myself as being that resource for people. Sometimes it's a not now, okay? But do you still stay in touch and stay connected
Hmm.
with people along the journey? That's what I've learned, and I get flanked for it. I'm just going to be honest. I get flanked for it all the time because I do stuff like this. Like this is, something that lights me up, being able to create a space, on a Saturday where people come in and network. This is not a revenue generator. Nobody paid, a price or a ticket, to come on
Yeah.
today, okay? But it's all about who am I meeting in the room? How am I creating the environment, for people, to number one, connect and build those relationships.
Yeah. And, right now, if you look on my LinkedIn, I have like a free strategy session. And that is strategic, but it's also to understand whether or not I can actually connect with you, right? Or if I can even help you,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
Um, and so if I can't, maybe I know someone else,
Yeah.
right? So in one of our breakout rooms, Crystal did a thing that I love doing as well, which is finding the connection in the room and then
Yeah.
going, hey, you need to talk to this person right now because they're going to be great for you. And I love doing that. It's something in networking that I do all the time. And I think more people should do that. And so bringing it back to what I was saying before is if I don't think that I can help you, I could probably think of someone else that can, or I can direct you to a community that could help you, which is something that I'm really sort of diving into lately, which is the sort of like community-based business model. How do you build a community, not for yourself, but for people like you, and to bring people together? Um, not only does that help with accountability, as we were talking about before, but it creates this safe environment where everyone can participate and also, whether it's sharing thoughts or maybe even putting out some sort of short content or some sort of, workshop. This community-based idea came about by going to a virtual summit called Mighty Network. So if anyone's ever interested, go ahead and check them out. They do put out some good content from time to time for sure.
Yeah, and I'll just say to everyone, when we had our conversation, when you shared with me the strategy, my mind was like totally blown. And I'm just going to say this, I'm not a stranger to communities, okay, because I do have communities on Facebook, okay? But what you shared with me and where I could possibly position a community, an online community,
Mm-hmm.
was absolutely mind-blowing because it's a space that I use all the time and I use it for my team, but never considered being able to create something like that, for people who might not want to be, on a social media platform per se for connecting. So, yeah, if you want to share, I'll let you share. But if you don't want me to take the cat out the bag, I won't take the cat out the bag.
Well, I would love for you to share and how that's, helped you or changed sort of like your approach moving forward,
Oh,
actually.
yeah, so I'm gonna share. So the biggest aha moment, and when Alan said you could consider starting a community on Slack, and when you said it the first time, I didn't really like catch that it was Slack that you said until you said it the second time, and I was just like, wait, what? I'm on Slack like every single day. I have multiple channels on Slack. And like I said, basically use Slack as a way to manage, my team, for communication, but never thought about it as a way to create that connection and that space for people who might not necessarily be on social media or even feel comfortable, because it's one of the things that I'm also noticing that's changing. Groups aren't the way that they used to be on social media anymore. Like groups used to be so much more active before. Now it seems just like everything else, there's an inundation of communities, and it doesn't really matter what the platform, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, every platform now has a community space built in, but it's required for us, or at least for me as the marketer, to know how people are interacting in those spaces. So a lot of times we're requiring stuff from our community, but if they don't feel safe on the platform, then they're not going to interact and they're not going to share the way how we want them to share. So when you said Slack, I was just like, oh my gosh, like game changer. So, I'm looking at, how can I possibly use that, to get more engagement, more connection in the members of my mastermind. And so, Jaliva, I saw your question. What is Slack? You've never heard of Slack. Well, Slack is what I know Slack of, and I'm expanding my horizons. It's a communications based tool, like a messaging tool. So part of what I do in my business, I have team members all across the world. And so Slack gives me the easy way to stay in communication, share files. If I need to do video calling, I can do video calling, do video, share, just everything, and just stay in communication. So that's what I use it for, but I've never thought about using Slack, for my community in my mastermind. So that was new. That was my aha coming out of my conversation with Alan this week.
Yeah, so it's definitely something that I've been a part of. Sort of what we mentioned in our conversation, which is Slack. It is, yes, there's also Telegram as well. I feel like Slack is a lot easier for you to manage. Telegram sort of gets out of hand. With Slack, you can create channels.
Mhm.
So for example, with Turia, what we talked about was you have different cohorts coming in. You can lock a specific channel for that cohort
Yeah.
so that only specific members can interact in that and no one else sees it, just people in that cohort. And then you open up all the
Right.
other channels for them to interact with, right? Whether it's announcements, networking opportunities, whatever you want to call them, they can still exist. But then there are specific channels for those cohorts that she starts. And then obviously there's also the one-on-ones if anyone wants to DM each other, or if they have specific questions for Taria, they can also message her as well.
Yeah, yeah. So like I said, game changer, because I'm looking at revamping, some things. Maybe not the big social media insiders community, but for my mastermind, so thank you for that.